if the Tennessee Titans want to turn things around, they're going to need some key players to make a leap. And I think JC Latham is primed for a massive breakout in 2025. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, on today's show, we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans most likely to have a breakout season. We're going to talk about some veterans who I think are going to be unsung heroes this year, and we'll talk about some low-key contributors that might surprise you in 2025. Before we dive into all of that, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there. Tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. Training camp is right around the corner. We're doing some top threes this week, but next week, we're going to start our in-depth positional preview series leading up to training camp. You aren't going to want to miss any of the content that I continue to pump out all year long. Always for free here on the Locked On Titans podcast. And that's rain, sun, snow, technical difficulties, sickness. It doesn't matter. I'm going to find a way to get you guys your content. So I hope that you enjoy the list that we go through this week. And I really like seeing your guys' feedback. Who are your breakout candidates, your unsung veterans, and your players that might surprise? But we got to start with those breakout candidates. And JC Latham is at the very top of the list. There is no player on the team that I think is more primed for a breakout season than JC Latham. Number one on the list of reasons why I think that, it's a simple fact of he's going into year two. It's a point that I will always make about players going into their second year. You should see some sort of big-time jump if they are going to be the player that you hope that they're going to be at whatever level or whatever player you want to make that be. JC Latham, obviously, top 7 pick in the draft. We need to see that jump to a Pro Bowl level player is what you have to expect when you take a guy top 10 as an offensive tackle. That's what you should be looking for. And from year one to year two, I think year one, you're training for the combine. You're training for the draft process. Some of these guys are rehabbing injuries that they played through in their final year of the college season. You're also starting a new job, brand new to the NFL. You're moving to a new city. You have to get a new apartment. You have to get new clothes. You have to establish a new diet system. You have to find new friends. You got to make new relationships. There is so much going on. From a life standpoint, I feel like, you know, when we talk about these players, we don't acknowledge enough the humanity of these players. Like, whenever you get a new job, you move to a new city, you go to a new school, it's hard. It's difficult for everyone. I am an extrovert. I can make friends in a pile of rocks. I'll find something to talk about. Like, I've always been able to do that. No shock, I'm sure, to all of you guys. But even for me, new situations, new jobs, new schools, stuff like that, at first, it's difficult to kind of find your place in things. So you have all of that off-field stuff going on. And then you have the on-field stuff of, hey, you're learning a brand new job. You got Bill Callahan. He's requiring you to do all these new things. You're learning a new playbook. And I will tell you, from the film study, JC Latham looked a little confused at times early in the season as to what his assignment was. If we see this front with this run play called, I have to block this man. Oh, they just shifted their front before the snap. Now that changes. He did look a little confused. First year on the job, that makes sense. So just the natural progression from year one to year two for anyone is the obvious number one reason. But then you have to get to the switch from left tackle to right tackle. And I always find it funny that people out there will say, oh, well, you know, edge rushers are really talented on both sides nowadays. Right tackles are just as important as left tackles. And look, you want to look at the pay, the highest paid offensive tackles, right tackles. I get that. But at the same time, they'll say, oh, well, right tackle is more natural, should give him better matchups, this and that. Well, if the head coach is saying, hey, he's going to get better matchups and stuff like that, and it's going to be more natural for him on the right side, well, I don't know, because JC Latham was a left tackle in high school. In theory, he's played left tackle longer than he's played right tackle. So how are we going to say he's a natural right tackle just because he did that for a couple of years at Alabama? That just overrules the 1 year at left tackle in the NFL and the multiple years at left tackle in high school. I think he's more natural left tackle. You know what I mean? But what we're really saying is, hey, JC Latham may not have the high-level athleticism to win on the left side consistently throughout his career. The right side may be better for him. Well, that right there is acknowledging that, okay, your left tackle needs to be a little bit better than your right tackle. That's like something that is real, like left tackle is still the more important position is, I guess, my point overall. And I think it's funny that we try to argue it. But with that being said, that should give Latham a better opportunity to, if that is his natural spot and all of those things and better matchups, and then Latham should have a slightly, even if it's minuscule, but slightly easier job, right? So that's the second fact, is he's moving over to right tackle. But then we talk about the body change. JC Latham talked about it publicly. He weighed 360, 370 at times last year during the season. And at first, he thought he would be good to go. He even said that Chargers game, even though he gave up a couple of sacks that weren't really on him, if I'm honest. Go back and look at them if you want. He said he felt good. And then he played later in the season, and he mentioned the Houston game, and he was like, oh, I'm too heavy. I'm not fast enough to deal with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. I'm not. So now he's lost 20, 30 pounds, 340, 330, somewhere in there, and he wants to keep going. So the body transformation, the off-field stability of year 2, and then the change from left tackle to right tackle, all of that combines for a clear path to a breakout for JC Latham. Now, the second player that I want to mention here is T'Vondre Sweat. Shocker, the high draft pick from last year. This is when those guys make that breakout. But Sweat is set up for it perfectly because his pass rush numbers were actually better last year than maybe you would think. His pressure rates were pretty solid. He was getting pressure into the backfield. Now, consistency is going to be key for T'Vondre Sweat. Actually getting the quarterback on the ground when he gets pressure in the backfield is going to be key for T'Vondre Sweat. That's something that I pointed out on his college tape. There was a bit of an issue. He just didn't seal the deal. He would get in the backfield, he would get to the quarterback, and he would miss. You know what I mean? He would whiff in some way. So actually finishing the job, play good defense and then rebound. In basketball, they say a defensive possession isn't actually over until you secure the rebound. Well, T'Vondre Sweat needs to secure the rebound to finish his possessions. You know what I mean? Like, that has to happen. And if he's able to do that a couple of more times, we don't need 10 sacks out of T'Vondre Sweat. That's not the expectation. But instead of having 1 or 2, if he could kick that up to 4 or 5 sacks, now we're talking about a guy who could play the run at that level and then get 4 to 5 sacks a season. That's a pretty good interior defensive lineman. And I think that would constitute a breakout, quote unquote, breakout season for T'Vondre Sweat. Now, I want to mention this. And look, when I do this because I didn't like the Sweat pick out of the gate, I'm going to take more hate for it. I can live with it. All right, sure. Come at me, bro. T'Vondre Sweat forgave me personally, so why would I worry about what you got to say? But Jim Wyatt, in his mailbag over the weekend, said that T'Vondre Sweat looked just okay. That's what he said. I thought T'Vondre Sweat looked just okay this offseason. Let's keep an eye on that. Let's just, I know I'm not the guy to do it. If someone else were to say it, you would probably take it more seriously. But that's Jim. He is the team reporter. He is not going to badmouth players or blah, 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 to not, to admit that he thought he just looked okay. I thought that was interesting because if that's coming from the team guy who's paid by the team, someone who isn't paid by the team may actually have other things to say that could be a little worse. So let's just put a pin in that and move forward. But the last breakout, and I can't say player anymore, the last breakout candidate that I'm going to talk about here is Brian Callahan. I thought Brian Callahan actually did a pretty good job as an offensive play caller last year and a play designer specifically. I thought there were people open consistently that the quarterbacks didn't get to, or the ball was inaccurate, or, all of a sudden the protection fell apart, but the play was open. I think if some of the X factor players hit, especially Cam Ward, like we talked about, the conversation around Brian Callahan, rightfully so, being him on the hot seat right now, could turn to, now Brian Callahan is looked at as an up-and-coming offensive mind who the NFL has to watch out for. Brian Callahan could be the breakout star of this season if he can get this team going back in the right direction. But let's talk about some guys who won't get quite as much credit. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier with Monarch Money? It can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. And in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. One thing for me is I was kind of shocked by how much money I was spending on online shopping, and then I got the Monarch Money app. I was able to track all that stuff, get a better view. Really is out of sight, out of mind. If you aren't monitoring this stuff and looking at this stuff, you're not going to be conscious of it. So Monarch Money helps you do all of that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about breakout opportunities for the Titans in the first segment. JC Latham, T'Vondre Sweat, Brian Callahan, all coincidentally going into their second year with the Titans. No surprise there. Breakouts in second years. It makes sense. But now I want to talk about some players who I think are going to be unsung heroes this year. I think they're going to have a major impact on the Tennessee Titans, on their win-loss outcome, on the team behind the scenes. They're going to have a major impact in multiple ways, and they're guys who I don't think fans really talk about enough. And even when it happens, even during the season, I don't think that these players are going to get enough shine. So I'm going to do my best. To give these players shine throughout the season, because I think it's pretty clear that they're going to have a major impact. Now, before I dive into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. But number one is Kevin Zeitler. We talked about the limited action for Kevin Zeitler during mandatory minicamp, which makes sense. He's 35 years old. Why would we need the 35-year-old guy to be out there, busting his butt in mandatory minicamp, getting reps against these young go-hards? That's not what Kevin Zeitler needs to do. Kevin Zeitler's impact on the Titans during the offseason has been, will be, and is his locker room impact. The leadership, how he goes about his day, how he carries himself. Guys want to be professional athletes for as long as they can, and it's a career thing. Yeah, we all want to be great, and everybody who's ever played sports wants to win Super Bowl MVP and championships and all, but really what a professional athlete should worry about most is being employed. And if you do that, if you focus constantly on how do I keep a job in the league, you're probably going to continue to get better as a player, and you're going to be a good professional, and you're going to hit all of, maybe not all of the things that you hope for and reach every goal, championship and MVPs and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you're an offensive lineman, you're never winning an MVP anyway, so those childhood dreams of being that, that's gone immediately anyway. Being a veteran, it's like, I would compare it to, and maybe this is a bit existential, but since I'm so sick, I'm contemplating my morality, okay? But it's like how you would view life. It is it's scary to grow old. I'm 34 now, and it's crazy to me. I still remember being 11 and 12, and I still feel closer to that than I do a 35-year-old man. You know what I mean? When people call me sir, it does hurt my soul a little bit. But like, it's a privilege to grow old. It's a blessing to be old. Like, you got to live your life. You got to experience so many different things. And it's hard because getting old means you get closer to death. But like, at the end of the day, it is a privilege to grow old. Like, that's a blessing. You can only hope that you get to grow old, because many don't, right? Many don't. Well, in the NFL, it is a privilege to be a veteran. In any professional sport, it is an incredible accomplishment to play for 10 years in the NFL. The average NFL career is 3 years. So Kevin Zeitler, with that knowledge, that perspective, that wisdom, that is going to be a major impact on the team. And obviously, things like that can't be fully felt by fans. We don't get the insight to all of that. We don't get to see, Kevin Zeitler sitting down for his second meal of the day and eating something healthy. And JC Latham looks at it and says, man, I guess that's what I got to do. Or Kevin Zeitler alone in the weight room working on his hand placement, or out on the field, and Peter Skoronski gets done with his, treatment in the injury room and looks over at Zeitler at what he's doing. And then he walks up to him and says, what are you doing? What's your plan here? What's your motive here? And Kevin Zeitler says, well, since year 6, I started doing it, and it helps me with those little things. Are so hard to even if you saw them happen, it would be hard to quantify just how impactful that stuff can be. But that's what I think Kevin Zeitler can do. And excuse me, not out of the woods yet. Feeling better, but not out yet. But with how young the Titans' offensive line is, with a Jackson Slater in there, and even, an Andrew Rupsich, a John Ojukwu, obviously Latham and Skoronski, who I already mentioned, but the Titans' offensive line needs that leadership and that wisdom so desperately. So I think Zeitler, not only on the field where he's a top 10 guard and a consummate professional and solid rock at right guard, not only that, but what he can do off the field, I just think he's never going to get the props that we probably need to give him in season or before. The second player that I got to mention is Dre'Mont Jones. All right, now, Kevin Zeitler is off the field. Dre'Mont Jones is an on-the-field help. Dre'Mont Jones' versatility to take snaps at edge and then to come inside on passing downs where he'll be able to win inside. He's obviously not as big as Danico Autry. Danico Autry was 6'6", 270. Dre'Mont Jones is more 6'3", 250. But the inside-outside versatility in the pass rush. And look, I think Arden Key has inside-outside versatility. He has throughout the best moments of his career. But when you have despicable edge rush pressure numbers, and Arden Key is actually your best guy analytically in getting pressure on the quarterback, you can't take him off the edge and put him inside and use him. When Arden Key was getting used like that is when he was on teams that had more edge rush talent and they could afford to use him on the interior. Well, the Titans couldn't. So now you have a player in Dre'Mont Jones who you can play on the inside, let Arden Key be on the outside, and let Femi Oladejo be on the outside, and then you have Dre'Mont Jones and Jeffrey Simmons, and you rush that as a third down package. That's great. Not great. Hold on. Scratch that. Great is an overstatement, okay? I'm just excited about the potential because it's the best pass rush group I think the Titans can put together. It's the one that I want to see out there on third downs the most, is that group right there. But we don't know what we're going to get from Femi as a development player. And, at the end of the day, Dre'Mont Jones isn't Chris Jones or something like that. But I'm just saying I think that the versatility that Draymond Jones provides to rush inside and outside is going to allow the Titans to put together their best combinations and to continuously rotate their best combinations. And I think with a pass rush group that's not going to be that great no matter what, I think having the versatility to change groups around and keep guys fresh with a rotation, that's actually going to be what helps the Tennessee Titans maximize what their group can give them, even if I think that the ceiling is pretty limited. So Draymond Jones is a guy who I think is not going to get enough credit. He's going to be an unsung hero this year, but the trickle-down effect from having him on the defense, I think, is very, very important. And then the last guy that I want to mention, as someone who I think is going to be an unsung veteran hero for the Titans, is Xavier Woods at safety. He's just versatile. He can do a little bit of everything. Is any of it great? Does he have elite speed? Is he a super physical, big power hitter in the box to intimidate guys? No. Not a lot of A's on the report card for Xavier Woods, but a lot of B's. Coverage versatility. Play in the back. Play split. Play a cover for a quarter. Match that cover for a quarter. Come down in the box. Be a guy who can, play dime linebacker and be physical enough to step up. Be a guy who can get on the outside and match up on a tight end. I don't think you want Xavier Woods playing man coverage on tight ends over and over, but he can overhang and do that. So I think Xavier Woods' versatility, his reliability, again, very similar to a guy like Kevin Zeitler on the offensive side of the ball, but now on defense. The Titans' safety room last year, they were just trying to make things work. And I think Denard Wilson did a pretty good job, but they were cycling through so many different people after the Quandre Diggs injury that I think having just a solid veteran there and not only that, but like Draymond Jones, Woods is kind of a best of both worlds from what we've talked about. Allowing Amani Hooker to roam more and use his ball hawking and use his ability to create turnovers. Having a guy that you trust in the back end in Xavier Woods, like when you trusted Quandre Diggs, it allows Amani Hooker to play his best football. And Amani Hooker had a low-key Pro Bowl level season last year. So let Amani Hooker do his thing. Xavier Woods is someone you can rely on, and he may not make the big plays. He may not get all the interceptions. He may be a guy who fans don't get excited to talk about. But Xavier Woods is going to have a big impact on this team, and I think Zeitler, Draymond Jones, and Woods, by far, are the guys who are – there are other veteran players, like a Cody Barton. I called him unsung earlier because it was just based on this offseason so far. Once we get into the season, I think people are going to talk about a guy like Cody Barton quite a bit. You know what I mean? So there are other veteran additions that I think will help the team as well, but they're going to get a little bit more shine than I think Zeitler, Woods, and Draymond Jones will get. So let me know your unsung veterans that you are predicting. Now we're going to talk about some players who I think might just surprise fans this year. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We've talked about my breakout candidates. We've talked about players who I think will be unsung heroes for the Titans this season. Now I'm going to talk about some players that I think might surprise folks. Before I get into it, though, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camp gets closer, moves are being made. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So, looking at some potential surprises. And I got to start with tight end David Martin Robinson. Now, we saw a massive trade happen in the NFL on Monday. Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith for Minkah Fitzpatrick, and then there's a 5th and a 7th round swap in there as well between the teams. But we also got a follow-up report after that trade that the Dolphins could be looking to trade for a tight end to replace Jonnu Smith, and obviously the Titans might be a team that would love to have those conversations. And with Chigakonkwo being in the last year of his contract, being a guy who sort of mirrors Jonnu Smith's skill set, that could be enticing. And I think that Chigakonkwo would be cheaper than a guy like Kyle Pitts or a guy like maybe who else would be available? Cole Kmet from Chicago. Maybe Kyle or maybe Chigakonkwo would be a little bit cheaper. Maybe you could get Chigakonkwo for a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick, which is what he got drafted for, which to get the production out of him that they got and then get the pick back afterwards, that would be great, okay? So you might see something like that. And whether that happens or not, Josh Whyle, I don't think they'd be interested in Josh Whyle whatsoever. Why would any team want to trade anything for Josh Whyle right now? But I think Josh Whyle might not make the team, and that comes back to my point about David Martin Robinson. If Josh Whyle doesn't make this team, if Josh Whyle or Chigakonkwo were to get traded, if none of that happens, and just all 4 of those guys battle it out in camp, Chig and Gunner and DMR and Whyle, I still think that David Martin Robinson could have a contribution to this team that will surprise people during the season. A lot of casual Titans fans will be like, who in the world is David Martin Robinson? You know what I mean? But obviously, last year he impressed during training camp. That's why the Titans kept him on the roster despite not planning to use him very often and make him active because they wanted to continue to see his development. And this year, he shined. He's done pretty well. I think I saw Jim Wyatt say that he's had 10 catches in the all-season program. He has kind of a mesh between Chigakonkwo's skill set and a guy like Gunnar Helm's skill set. He is closer to Chigakonkwo's size, a bit undersized, about 6'3", but he's a bit bulkier than Chigakonkwo. Maybe not quite the athlete that Chigakonkwo is, but I think he can do some very similar things as a move tight end. And in the Titans system, the system that I believe Brian Callahan wants to run, he wants a true, versatile, wide tight end that he can have out there in his 3 wide receiver sets. He wants a Gunnar Helm. He wants a Nick Van Ness. He wants a Josh Whyle in theory. Josh has never really turned into that for multiple reasons we can talk about at different times. But I think that Chigakonkwo, while being a talented player that obviously can help the Titans' offense, I think in a Brian Callahan perfect world, the Gunnar Helms of the world are the guy who he would want to use as his tight end with 3 wide receivers on the field with a tight end that can do it all, that can catch the ball and be big enough to block in circumstances. And I think David Martin Robinson can be a knockoff Chigakonkwo. Would you rather have David Martin Robinson in a 3rd-round pick, David Martin Robinson in a 4th-round pick, David Martin Robinson in a 5th-round pick going into next season? Or would you rather have David Martin Robinson and nothing because Chigakonkwo is going to leave as a free agent? The Titans have to have that conversation. So I think David Martin Robinson, especially now, and on tomorrow's show, I'm going to talk about potential trade candidates for the Titans. Obviously, Chigakonkwo will be on that list. We'll talk about surprise cut candidates for the Titans, and maybe it's not a surprise at this point, but Josh Whyle will be on that list. So we'll talk about the other tight ends. But David Martin Robinson is a guy who I think could make contributions during the season, and fans will be like, who in the world is that? And it would surprise them. I think the other guy that we need to consider is more of a veteran player, and it's Van Jefferson. And everyone is so excited about the rookie pass catchers that I think we're discounting Van Jefferson and where he is in the pecking order. I said when I did my depth chart projections, 3 weeks or a month ago, that I think Van Jefferson is actually going to be one of the 3 starting wide receivers out there on snap 1 for the Tennessee Titans. He's 6'1", over 200 pounds, has speed. So size and speed, a combination that the Titans didn't have a lot of in recent years. He's versatile enough to play all 3 of the wide receiver positions, whether it be slot or the outside spots, Z, X, inside, it doesn't matter. So I think that versatility, that size-speed combination, he is going to play more and get the ball more and have more opportunities than most Titans fans are expecting, in my opinion. And with those, I think he'll make surprise contributions. And the last guy I want to mention here is Johnny Hekker. And look, I'm not going to take a ton of time to explain why I think the punter will be a big surprise, but I think a lot of people loved Ryan Stonehouse, me included, and then before that it was Brett Kern, and I think that the excitement for the punter is at an all-time low. Look, Johnny Hekker is a solid player. I think people are excited for the special teams to improve, but like Ryan Stonehouse actually had like a fan base. And Brett Kern, we obviously know how beloved he was by this fan base. So Johnny Hekker has the least amount of hype and like fan love of any of the punters the Titans have had since before Brett Kern. So with that, I think that Johnny Hekker could maybe be the best punter since we saw some of Brett Kern's best seasons. Ryan Stonehouse really did take a step back after the injury, and you can't really blame him for that at the end of the day, but the lack of directional punting, the lack of hang time, the line drive, deep punts that give a ton of room between the returner and the coverage team that allow for buildup, some of that did have to do with why the Titans special teams was so bad. The coverage units and stuff like that were bad. The coaching was obviously pitiful. But Ryan Stonehouse's regression definitely fed into that as well. So I think Johnny Hekker at punter is a guy who you're going to like midway through the season be like, man, Johnny Hecker's way better than Ryan Stonehouse was last year. I'm kind of surprised by that. And that'll be a big part of why the Titans are improved on special teams. So give me Johnny Hekker. Johnny Hekker is a guy who might surprise. But again, tomorrow we're going to talk transaction stuff because with the big trade happening between the Steelers and the Dolphins, there are domino effects that could happen as well. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.